everyone. It is once again time for Once Upon a Tune, the podcast about tunes where we celebrate music
and the characters who make them. What's up, guys? I'm Broke Boland.
And I'm Dev Jana. This week we're going to jump straight into the big idea. Oh, no, we're not. I have a page 2 retraction from last time. We talked about perfect albums or no skip albums. And I have no idea how I left out Police Synchronicity on that list. This is one of the most, if not the most important albums to me in my entire life. It doesn't sound like anything else. It doesn't even sound, other Police stuff doesn't even really sound like it, and they really sound like they're jumping out of their skin, like just making so many amazing noises. And I know it's easy to kind of hate on Sting, but Homeboy could really write a melody, and one of the things I like to point out about his voice is that it was like a laser. You never see Sting like he's not almost never using vibrato. His voice it just like shoots to notes and sticks there and burns in for a little bit. Stuart Copeland's drumming on this is unbelievable. I think that a lot of what Andy Summers, and this will maybe lead into the big idea. The big idea today is artists that were either ahead of their time or kind of overlooked, or we think they deserved more. That was the real prompt. But Andy Summers, I think, is one of the most overlooked guitarists ever in rock and roll. It's kind of hard to stand out, I guess, when you got Sting as the front man and Copeland on the drums. But some of the work that he's doing on here is very soundscape, noisy stuff. That specifically listen to the intro to Synchronicity 2 sometime. You've heard it a bazillion times. Listen to it in terms of, this clearly set the stage for the things that Tom Morello would be doing, probably about 8 years later with Rage Against the Machine. Wanted to make sure that I did not leave this one out. Go ahead, Matt.
Now, why does Sting get hate? You said it's very easy to hate on Sting. I'm not saying I don't get it. I never hated on Sting. I always thought Sting was just doing his Sting thing.
I mean, his face is on one of my nipples right now, so I'm a fan. No, he's amazing, and
was there something he did that I missed, or is it just
when the chorus of your song is "If you love someone, set them free, free, set them free." Look, it's kind of easy to be like, whatever. He also, I think, is the
it's kind of like a genericness to him.
Yeah, and he's like his music as he left the Police, and he became the Sting that he was kind of Brand New Day and later. His music is very like lush and really highly polished, and he's one of those musicians. I've seen him live a few times. Every time I always say, like, he and Paul Simon could go travel the world and find the perfect exact musicians for every instrument on every song that they want, right? And Dominic Miller's been playing with Sting for 40 years now or something like that. But he's like, it's almost like when you go to a dentist's office or a doctor's office and you're in the lobby, you're like, oh, this is nice in a lobby way, and that's the kind of luxury. He's like, Sting's music sounds like a Coach bag.
The word for that is vanilla.
Yeah, so I totally get that, and I do. But I personally love Sting. I think he's similar to like in the way that Ozzy is, like was really great at taking a really weird, unique voice and surrounding it with incredible musicians all the time, But also the first time I saw him, Annie Lennox opened up. I was living in South Florida at the time, and a big hurricane came. It was Hurricane Francis. I want to say 2004. The whole state was evacuated. and went up and stayed with some friends in North Carolina. And while I was there, we were like, "Hey, Sting and Annie Lennox are playing tomorrow. Do you want to go?" I was like, "Absolutely!" We went.
Yeah.
And Sting was so good at being the like sexy old European guy that I almost threw my bra at him. That's how I always describe that show. I was like, "Oh my God, he is so good at this," and he's like, he uses every bit of the stage. He plays plays fingerstyle flamenco guitar. He plays guitar, obviously plays bass. He does some singing stuff, and he actually has a really calming sense of humor from the stage. I actually saw him on Broadway in Three Penny Opera when I was very young too. But yeah, so I've been a fan of Sting literally as long as I can remember.
Well, and people, I don't want to say people don't give him enough credit because maybe I'm just not as studied, but I felt like as somebody who's not like the world's biggest Sting or Police fan, the one thing as a musician that stood out is how the hell do you play some of those bass lines and sing the melodies at the same time like he could. Like, the credit for him being just a fantastic bass player is kind of overshadowed by that stigma of Sting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Incredible.
It is, and I think that people separate Sting from the Police, understandably so. But like the Sting that we got later on, who practiced hours-long tantric sex at the top of his castle. It's like it's hard to relate to that guy. The guy who's singing about Roxanne.
You wish you could.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, he's got kind of a Bono thing going on. But I do want to
that's a good way to describe it. That's a good way to describe it. It's like a Bono thing.
I do want to go back to listen to Andy Summers. His guitar playing is absolutely unbelievable in Police stuff. I know we've talked about that on the channel a couple times before, but one of the most important albums to me. And I think that did lead pretty well into our concept of people who were either before their time, overlooked, or the real prompt was we think they deserved more. I think Absolutely. I've talked enough though for a bit. Matt, who you got on your list?
All right, I'm gonna. So the first one I want to talk about is somebody that people aren't going to agree with me on if they don't know any better. And like the truth is, Little Richard. Little Richard is 100% number one on my list for the most overlooked or didn't get the credit they deserved. In this case, in the time he deserved to get it. Little Richard was so far ahead of his time and gave us so much of what we have now. All the way down to his beliefs, his personality, his sexual nature. I mean, everything that a rock star is, Little Richard gave to us and was not allowed to get a lick of credit for at the time. And it wasn't even until like the mid-90s even when it really started coming out how important that man was. Gay, black, with just an infectious style, taught us what rock and roll was supposed to be. The architect for rock and roll music.
Yeah. Tell me any other artist that kicked Jimi Hendrix out of their band. Like
no, there isn't one. But that's what I'm saying, and just how much he truly did, and how honest he stayed with himself. Until the 80s. There was a point in the 80s. There's this heartbreaking interview. I don't know if I ever talked about it on the podcast, but I feel like I may have. But you can look it up. There's this heartbreaking interview of him. I think he's on Letterman. I want to say he's on Letterman. I could be wrong. Could be Carson, but I think it's Letterman. And he comes out in a very straight-laced suit, and it's when he was preaching again, and he comes out and says, "I'm not gay anymore." And it just it crushes your heart, because you could tell that got beat out of him. You know what I mean? And he looked defeated and he looked tired and he didn't look himself. He didn't go out on that end, but there was that rough period where you could tell he was really fighting himself. Pat Boone's one who took a lot of Little Richard songs and made, for lack of a better term, white hits out of. And, he always held that against him. And that's one of the reasons why Little Richard, there's an interview where he talks about he wrote Long Tall Sally because he was like, Pat Boone couldn't sing it that fast. So I had to write a song that Pat Boone couldn't sing. So it had to be fast, gonna tell Mary about Uncle John. Like, so it's really funny, he tried so hard to navigate. But the truth is, by this point, and I'm so happy that I was around to see it, because I think, I said the 90s, but realistically in like the mid 2000s is when, documentaries started coming out and his praise truly got to where he was. And he was alive long enough to see that people did see him and did hear him and did feel him and know who he was and what he did. And, but it was heartbreaking. Like decades and decades went past where he was just Little Richard, the gay rock and roll guy. And it was so much more to that guy. And he was so strong in what he did and believed in. So, yeah, I have to put Little Richard on that list because eventually he got what he deserved. But not at the time he should have.
That sounds like someone killed him. Eventually, he got what he deserved.
Right. Well, it's
no. I'm with you.
It's totally true, though, man. Like, to go that long and be that important and that unnoticed, it's how deflating. And he knew how good he was. That was the best. And he'd say it. He's like, "You guys wouldn't be here without me," and everyone would just laugh and not realize he's right. So
cool. Yeah.
That's my first one, and like obviously I'm really passionate about it because that's the genre of music I gravitated to most. But I just think it's so important thinking about the influences he had.
Right.
Magatar Murphy also jammed with him.
I mean, I think if just about anybody could, they would.
Yeah.
It's well documented that Lemmy was a big fan. Well, there's a common denominator there. I don't know if we talked about on the pod before how Lemmy was a guitar tech and roadie for Hendrix.
Oh, yeah.
There's a common denominator there. Like my journey with Little Richard was, I also kind of took him for granted for most of my life, and my sister she made me a tape of all Little Richard that I would just had in my van in the 90s, and I don't think it left my tape deck for like 3 weeks. Like everyone was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Dude, I'm hearing punk rock and gospel and rockabilly. Like if I listen hard enough, I can hear the roots of like different, like the bridge from like gospel to like symphonic metal kind of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like, it's all in there." And people started singing along with the songs in the van. I had one of those vans. I literally had the orange shag carpet in the back of the van and stuff. And so like there was people in that thing a lot. And there was a period where we were bumping Little Richard for like half of a summer, and no one. It was common ground. It was common ground. Like like metalheads, hip hop heads, everyone could kind of be like, yeah, this is just actually, if you give it a chance, it's pretty good. It's really, really cool.
It's a vibe, and no other records from that time period sounded like that. For some reason, right. when that needle hits on a Little Richard album, it hits different. It really does. You can listen to anything from that time, and just the sound of a Little Richard record.
Yeah, it's really like. I always say it's like jumping out of the speakers, but it's more like it's popping out of the speakers with him.
It's distorting out of the speakers.
Yeah, and that voice, like there have been so many times where I'm like, is that what it actually sounds like? Like, Lucia! Like how do you even like make that noise?
He could yell and sing at the same exact time.
Right, oh,
like,
good call.
He could yell and melodically sing in a way that, not like metal, not right. Like those who came after, but it's weird, like shouting opera.
All right. Yeah. So, speaking of singers, we'll go from from one unique singer to another unique singer at a very different time, and probably in a very different way. I'm going to be talking about Page Hamilton, and specifically about the band Helmet. We're not going to say that Page had one of the best voices. I don't think anybody would would really say that. But it's a very unique voice, and Helmet is one of those bands that. I'll just talk very briefly about Page too. He grew up in Oregon and then studied jazz guitar at, I believe, NYU. Oh, hold on. I should look this up to make sure that.
You said you're going to speak about Page 2. Yeah, I was like, wait, what page are we on right now?
Oh, yeah. Page
I need to go back to Page 2?
No, he got his master's degree in jazz guitar from Manhattan School of Music. I'm sorry, not NYU. But yeah, so like clearly and I knew that he was like coming up in that jazz scene, and then started Helmet, which is the exact opposite. I described Helmet when I was young, when they were first hitting. I was in high school at the time, as it sounds like someone's like trying to shove cement blocks up your nose, and they just keep stopping. It's like it's really dense moments and really empty and really heavy, low tune. At the time, low tune guitars, and it's hard to imagine there being a movement like the nu metal movement without Helmet. Quite honestly, I think that they're one of those bridge bands that probably. I know I've heard Head and Monkey from Korn talk about Helmet being an influence. They've got some really interesting influences, honestly. But yeah, it's really hard to imagine people even accepting that move to nu metal without Page Hamilton and Helmet, and another one who disappeared, which is Jay. He was the guitarist for White Zombie, not the guitarist for Rob Zombie.
Oh.
And it that like when Las Exorcisto came out, everyone was like, "There's no way they're gonna play this on the radio." And then Thunder Kiss 65 hit, and it was like there was kind of a new resurgence of like fun, dark metal as opposed to like She's My Cherry Pie, like fun, like just silly metal,
Yeah.
which was only like 4 years earlier, quite honestly, you know.
Well, Helmet's kind of one of those bands that just never had
Yeah.
that one hit. If
Yeah.
they would have had one hit
No.
to make it, everyone would know their name, you know? 'Cause
And they were so close.
Deep dive.
They were so close.
Yeah.
Listen to FBLA too. We'll put that on the playlist. There's a bunch of really great songs. I know Meantime, or I think Betty was their best selling album, but in the Meantime has some of my favorites on it. And I think those are two specifically players and bands that opened the way for not just stuff like nu metal, but also like Tool, and you know like a different. Eventually, probably bands like Gojira, you know, like I think that lane for that to be popular, it's hard to imagine without the musicianship of Helmet and the uniqueness of them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So yeah, my next one is New York Dolls.
Oh,
Again, a band that over time absolutely got, you know, their recognition in the underground scene and in the punk rock scene, but really some of the innovators of punk rock, they influenced any punk rock band that are called the founders of punk rock. You know, you hear the Ramones and Sex Pistols and the Clash, and you know, I'll throw like Blondie, especially the New York City scene, the CBGB scene. They're all going to tell you New York Dolls did it first. You know, starting back in like 1971, 72, I wouldn't even say they're punk. They're just a sloppy rock and roll band with really catchy tunes.
yeah.
You know, but what brought them? What's that?
I think a lot of people consider them glam for some reason.
Well, and it's not wrong. I feel like they were a glam rock band who weren't good enough to be glam rock.
So they were like punk glam. Okay, yeah, that's
Exactly.
A good way to put it.
You know what I mean? They bridged the gap between glam and punk. So,
Glunk.
ugh. Pam.
Yeah, exactly.
But they dressed like girls. I wouldn't even say would it be considered drag? Because they did it very like ironically. You know what I mean? Like it was as a shock value. Like,
right.
Okay, we're gonna come here and dress up like girls, and like they really did. They were called the New York Dolls, so they dressed like the New York Dolls, and just had these heavy hitting, catchy ass rock and roll songs, and the lead singer was David Johansen, who went on to be an actor, and funny enough, his alter ego was Buster Poindexter, who you say, I don't know that name, or what, who is that? I'm feeling hot, hot, hot.
Yeah.
Was his big hit. He did a whole bunch of interesting Cuban music, and it was actually really good.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and he was super charismatic. We just lost him last year.
Did we just lose him? Yeah,
we just lost him. But he was also an actor. He was the cab driver in Scrooged, the Bill Murray movie. He was is that the Ghost of Christmas Present, I think. But he was in a lot of different movies and stuff. But you know, the founding member, he was the vocalist, David Johansen. Johnny Thunders came from that band. Bassist was Arthur Kane, and the other guitar player and pianist was Sylvain, who did a whole bunch of other cool, like, just these are like true blue New York City rock and rollers, like the foundation layers of New York City rock and roll. Drummer was Jerry Nolan. And you know, it's so weird to be one of those almost bands. Like, I can't imagine how that feels,
right,
to be an almost band and that means like you deserve all the accolades that those who came after you got, because they wouldn't have got there without you. but you were too far ahead of the curve to be gotten at the time you were there.
That happens a lot with trailblazers, and a lot of them never even got to be one-hit wonders. The one-hit wonders came after them, which is
absolutely
doubly difficult, I imagine.
So New York Dolls, big shout out.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to talk about one of, in my opinion, LA's best hip hop acts of all time, which is the Dilated Peoples.
You're teaching me.
Yeah, Evidence, Rock Irish Science, and the magnificent DJ Babu on the turntables, continuing what was at the time. I know I've spoken on the pod about being half Indian. I'm not sure I mentioned the other half of me is Filipino genetically. And Filipinos were just ruling the turntables in the aughts, man. Babu was like, I consider him like the Steve Vai of the turntable. And I think a lot of people have kind of absolutely overlooked him in terms of like skill and craft, in terms of turntablism, which I know is not. That's very much an unk thing at this point, if that makes sense. But these guys were incredible, and I think that they were collateral damage to the Everlast Eminem feud with the line of like dilated with your CDs that nobody sees when they released, I believe was M's rap on them. And I was like, it's kind of true, but that's kind of what we love about them, is that they're ours, like they're underground and they're ours. Really, really great stuff. I would check out Expansion Team, their second album, I believe it was 2002. That has some of my favorite rhymes on them, on it, all the way from beginning to end. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Even
look at him, folks. He's getting into it right now, just thinking about it. That look on your face. You got lost. You forgot you were on a podcast for a second.
I did.
That's awesome.
Either run or get ran, don't become an example, stampede or get trampled. It's just really great stuff on that. Although I'll use my brain before using a fist, don't push it, wake up, refuse, and resist. Keep that forefront these days, folks. Fantastic album. And I also want to shout out, I talked about Babu. I think him and Hubert were those like dominant Filipino turntablists in the aughts, and I got to see Hubert at the Independent in San Francisco when Lyrics Born just kind of showed up. Hubert came out with just 2 turntables and a mixer, and that's it, and destroyed us. The opening act had like 5 computers, 2 turntablists. They were doing everything they could to keep the crowd's attention. At one point in time, they were making pancakes and throwing the pancakes into the audience, just anything they could. And everyone was like, what is this? And Kubrick came out with just 2 turntables and a fader and destroyed. It was unbelievable. That era of like turntablism was really something else. But yeah, Dilated Peoples, we'll put a couple songs from my favorite album of theirs on the playlist for this. And just to remind everyone, on onceupodatoon.com, the episodes are all on the screen. You can just, embedded. You can just watch them there, or you can like and subscribe. It also helps out. But we also put out a playlist for each episode that contains all of the artists and songs from each of them about whom we've discussed in the episode. So you can check that out on onceupodatoon.com.
And these playlists are no joke, folks. I find myself one of the coolest things that I've learned doing this with Dev is, we've been friends for a long time, but our music styles are so far apart with enough overlay to be able to have this podcast. But I have learned about so many new cool bands, and I hope you guys out there have too, just from listening to him and then going back and listening to these playlists. And these playlists they're no joke. I mean, they're really cool.
Fun. They're really fun.
They are a history lesson in music, and they're all over the board. We try and keep, pop, rap, punk. We have our favorites, and you guys already know them by this point. But make sure to check these playlists out if you're at work or you're cleaning the house. Hopefully we can help turn you on to some new stuff. Yep. Some new old stuff.
Indeed. Some stuff that's new to you.
That's right. Or rediscover.
Yeah, there we go.
So I'm going to talk about somebody who's out now, a little more modern. He's been out for a long time. It's somebody that I've personally met a couple times, and he's a folk singer from Florida. And he goes by Possessed by Paul James. He's a one-man act. He plays fiddle. He plays banjo. He plays guitar. He sticks a microphone by his foot and just taps his foot while he sits on a chair, and he literally looks possessed while he's singing it. Eyes rolling in the back of his head, and has just some amazing, amazing lyrics. He's a folk artist, but it doesn't cross into the folk punk artist, but he has the energy to him that a lot of folk punk artists are influenced and, gravitate towards him. But he's true blue folk with an intensity. And his name's Conrad Wirt. And he's just a really cool guy who can write amazing songs and bring the energy. I watched him captivate 2,000 people just sitting in a tent in the pouring rain at a music festival with just him on stage. Big old empty stage with a wooden chair and a guy playing a fiddle by himself, and he's sitting there shaking and being like, oh, da, da, da. And he's got this voice to him that just commands you listen to the words he's saying. He does play with other artists on his albums and like releases albums with other musicians on them to bring the songs up. But when you go see him live, especially solo, I've rarely experienced one person bringing so much soul into a room and such a big sound with just a voice and playing a guitar like a violin like a guitar. Like, that's not a big sound. It's a sound, but it's not a big sound. But the way his voice carries and the songs he writes, he's somebody that I don't know if he's ever going to get to where I think he should be, because he is absolutely a modern day folk hero that should be recognized, not just for songwriting, but just his work on the side, the human being he is. He's a teacher, a special education teacher. And one of the coolest things about it, here's like the depth of his style of thinking that I thought was beautiful. He's a one-man act, but his act is called Possessed by Paul James. I said his name's Conrad Wirt. Where's Paul and James come from? I heard him say it on stage one time. He said, my father's name is Paul and my grandfather's name is James. And when I'm on stage, I'm not alone. I'm possessed by my family. This is all from family. And like, that's what a lot of his songs are about, is like that kind of connection and that we're all family. And like, it's really unique individual, very, very grounded to talk to. He's the kind of person that, like I said, I've been to, I was at a music festival one time, Muddy Roots Music Festival in Cookeville, Tennessee. And he's in his car tuning his guitar. And I walk past and I just see him in the front seat of his car. And I'm like, hey, what's up, man? I'm like, oh, nothing, man. I'm a big fan. He's like, oh, well, come get in. Literally sat next to him in his car. Told me to get in his car. Sat next to him, BS'd with him until he had to get on stage. He put his strings on and then was like, oh, I got to go. Tosses me his keys and asks me to lock his car. I just met this guy. Yeah. Tosses me, he's like, lock it up. Just throw the keys on stage while I'm up there. So I did. I mean, I locked his car up. I made my way through this huge crowd and just like threw him by his foot. And he looked at me and nodded like in the middle of his set. I'm like,
Tuesday.
Just so down to earth. You know what I mean? Like,
that dude's got stories to tell.
Yeah. So look him up. Possessed by Paul James. If I would pick a song to add to the playlist, I would probably do I got a couple of them which we can talk about later, but just for the record, Hurricane's like just an amazing song. So
Hurricanes,
we'll go with Hurricane.
Cool. That was awesome. That was a great story.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about some of my favorite melody writers who deserved better. I'll do a quick kind of 2-for-1, because the first one I'm going to do is the Zombies. I consider one of the best 60s bands, and I did not know their story at all until a few years ago, and I was really just totally surprised. Most people probably know Time of the Season. Do 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 do. What's your name? Who's your daddy?
Who's your daddy?
Is he rich? Is he rich like me? Or for me, it was She's Not There, which I actually first, which I first learned from seeing Santana live. Santana used to play that all the time live with the classic lineup, so it's on a bunch of their old things.
Oh, that's got such a Santana feel to it.
Yeah,
no wonder why he played it.
When Santana plays it, it's like it sounds like it's a Santana song, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that was by this band called the Zombies. Oh, they're the ones who did the Time of the Season. Oh, they must have had this amazing career, been one of those trailblazing '60s acts. Not quite. The short version is that they broke up in '67, and we're just like, well, we don't think that, they had some contract disputes, if I remember correctly, and they broke up in '67, and then Time of the Season came out in '68. I think they broke up in December of '67, even like a couple months before it came out, and then their big hit came out right after they broke up, and they've kind of come back and forth with different lineups and stuff for a very long time. So, huge bummer. For them, I'm sure they could have gotten so much better if the time would have just been a little bit different on the breakup. If they would have waited 6 months, or if I believe that came out on a like a compilation album, or maybe if that would have been released in the holiday season earlier rather than spring the following year. Just sometimes things don't line up, but the melodies that they wrote, and when I started diving into their discography, which is not as I was expecting there to be like 20 years of music. You know what I mean? It's like I think it's like 5 years. Literally every single song has an amazing melody, and some of them, like The Way I Feel Inside, is just like an organ and a single voice, and I find myself singing that all the time and going, oh, it's that song again, because it has like 12 amazing melodies in it. And then along those lines, about 20 years later, 30 years later, we lost Jeff Buckley, which was one of the worst losses. We really got one. It's my wife never listened to him, so we listened through the demos. We listened through the Live at Shinny, and then we listened to Grace, which is a masterpiece album from beginning to end. And then I had to be like, and that's it. That's all we have, And that was like one of the craziest losses. The way that I described Jeff Buckley to first of all, his use of like voice leading with both his like his vocals and his instrument is really fantastic. And the way that I describe him was he sounded like a ghost even when he was alive. There's no other voice that really kind of penetrates the same way. And we lost him drowned while swimming in the Mississippi in Memphis just one day. The guy he was with said he picked up the radio and took a couple steps back and turned back, and he was gone. And then we lost Jeff Buckley. Massive loss for all of us.
How insane! That quick.
Yeah, it's wild.
That quick.
I was sure that he was going to be around for 30 years and have one of those great careers that he gets an NPR retrospective. When he's finally retiring when he's 60s. But yeah, that's just what happened.
Wow. God.
Oh, and I'm gonna put "So Real," my favorite song off of that album, on the playlist. If you haven't checked that out, it's one of those ones that I think people just kind of listen past because there's so many great songs on that album. But his vocal performance on that is out of this world.
I'm gonna have you tag team this one with me because I know. Back when I was 16, Dev was my guitar teacher, and I remember how excited he got when I brought up that I was listening to this next band, the Bad Brains.
Oh, yeah.
And I was so pumped because I didn't know other people knew who they were.
Yeah.
Even to this day, when I meet a Bad Brains fan, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, some of these bands, it's hard to say because now, 30, 40 years ahead, it just makes sense. These bands got their credit. No, they didn't. They really didn't. Yeah. We know who they are now because the legends. But, back in their day, these guys should be sitting on mountains. The Bad Brains was all African American punk band from Washington D.C. that kind of accidentally invented hardcore.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, like
right? Like one of
was
the
like a
godfathers of hardcore punk rock, and like they are the pioneers. You know,
and they had
they don't like that. They don't.
yeah,
They don't
they had
like
an
the term
adversarial
hardcore.
they had an adversarial relationship with any of the labels that were put on them, because I hear like soul and hip hop and stuff in there too. It's really incredible.
Well, and that's the thing. They're a reggae band, they're a soul band, they're a funk band, they're a heavy metal band. They've even delved into hip hop. I mean,
Yeah.
they've been around for so long. I don't know when they broke up. I know they formed in '76.
Yeah, same year I was formed. To give you
Yeah,
an example,
yeah,
it was a long time ago.
Dev has a bad brain. Beautiful brain. I'm sorry, I misspoke. But yeah, so it's one of those bands that, again, they rejected their recognition to the crowd that appreciated them the most. And there isn't anything more punk rock to me than that. Like, you know, like that's kind of awesome. But and like HR. But
Yeah.
what do you even say about him?
You know, I was also just looking this up. I was like, they have
I'll
to be in
let
the
you
Rock and
take
Roll
it from
Hall.
here.
Well, I was like, they have to be in the Rock Hall. You know, like that was my first thought. I was like, they have to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so I looked it up while you were talking there, and it says, in October 2016, the Bad Brains were nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but were not inducted. And that's all. Were they? So like, are they just not eligible anymore? Because like, I know some people, they happen. I don't know. It's just we're gonna eventually do an entire episode on the Rock Hall. But this just seems like a gross oversight. I still can't believe Iron Maiden's not in there. That's just one of the most ridiculous.
Yeah, but
things
there's
to me.
reasons.
But like,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff we'll get into on that episode. So be on the lookout. That's coming soon.
sorry, that just really kind of blew me away. The Bad Brains, again, they're kind of exemplify when I was young. You know, like you said, they started in '76, and I did not know this. Just looking this up here, apparently their original name was Mind Power in '76, and then which makes Mind Power to Bad Brains. That makes sense to me. If you're developing this sense of what your act is going to be. But to me, they were this perfect example of a band. And I'm going to toss out Fishbone here because we had talked about this too, where they were on my list, of this band that you find out about because they influenced some of your heroes. And then you listen to them and you're like, oh my God, they influenced all of my heroes, like in genres and stuff, or they influenced people I didn't know were my heroes yet. And I'm going to go listen to them now because they're amazing, because they were able to do, well, they created their band in a way that was very natural, and they weren't doing it like as a boy band or something. They were doing it to do it. And then as a result, they could explore, and different albums could have different feelings. And then they have this amazing full catalog eventually. It's one of the things we were talking about is kind of disappeared in music. Even people these days, they have their side projects for things that don't sound like the core band and stuff. And
it's hard to put that much energy into something that you don't. And like, it sounds horrible to say, but it's the truth. It works with the older you get. It's hard to put that much energy into something that you don't know, or without the idea of any payoff. You know what I mean? And like that payoff can mean multiple things. I'm not just talking about financially or even getting credit for, the payoff can mean 1,000 things to you, but it's just hard to put your energy into something that's something that is well spent on the youth.
Yeah, well, I
when
always
you have
say
time.
the juice has got to be worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
And like as you get older, it's harder to squeeze. So like it perfectly makes sense. But they're a perfect example. And again, Fishbone, I got to be on stage while Fishbone was playing, just not, just observing.
Yeah.
Gosh, because it's 25 years ago now, and they had been around for like 30 some years, right? And another example of a band that's just like, they're a band because that's who they are and that's what they do, but also they can be around for as long as they have because they have a legacy that they can kind of keep working on. And that just seems like something that is getting harder and harder to find. Even like, I'm thinking like Jack White, it's like, I'm not quite sure what Jack White, I know he's doing something. I don't know what he's doing, and it's probably
He's
gonna be
still
with
he's
different
still
people next
releasing
time.
weird stuff every now and
Yeah.
then.
And he's been around for a quarter century already. So it's like I don't know, like I don't know who's gonna be there. I really do feel like Dominic Fike is. I really like that guy. I really do. I want to. I'm not worried about. I'm not saying that he hasn't gotten what he deserves, but I am worried about him kind of moving away from music. And I want to swing in a completely different direction. And this is going to be a pretty short one because trip hop is a very niche
Ooh,
place,
trip hop.
and it's one of my favorite versions of music growing up in the '90s. Specifically, I think DJ Shadow's Introducing is the seminal recording. I've seen Shadow live a bunch, and he has an amazing catalog. But you still hear Organ Donor and Building Steam from a Grain of Salt every single time you see him, all the way through into the 2020s. Like he can't not play those because they're part of the lexicon, honestly. But I'm going to talk about DJ Cam, who was a much smaller DJ, and I don't know anybody other than like two other people that I've met who were like, oh yeah, actually I remember Cam specifically.
You're on your own on this one.
Yeah, there was a compilation album called DJ Kicks that he put out in '97 that was really good, some stuff on it. But his debut, I believe it was his debut, 1996, was called Mad Blunted Jazz. That I've never stopped listening.
Jazz.
Yeah, I've never stopped listening to that album since I first heard it, and that was probably 2000 or a little bit later, maybe '99, something like that when I first heard it. And
So
I've
how
never
did you
stopped
get
listening to it.
introduced?
A buddy of mine who he was actually the very first person with whom I ever played music. When we were 14, we just always, that's just how we connected, and we always listened to like whatever we could find that the other person would be interested in. We couldn't, that was part of the driving force of how we would find music. So like I brought him Helmet, and he brought me Handsome Boy Modeling School. He brought me like. He brought me a lot of the underground hip hop stuff that I'm not even sure how he must have found where some bodies were buried or something to find some of this stuff. But
Found
we
him
were
under the bodies.
well, and back then we were like in tape trading circles. Like you would do that, and you would find something, and you'd be like, "Oh, this is interesting on this," and you would talk to people. I was telling my wife about this. How like in the '90s, it was like legitimately one day I was talking to some kid at the arcade. And I found out that he had something that I was interested in. I was like, I got this, and I would go make a copy for him. And be like, I'll just carry it in my pocket until I run into him again. Like that was just part of life. And so you would find out about stuff like that, and then you could dig into like a record store's like bargain bin and probably find something as a result. But yeah, that was the reality back then. We just, we were 20 some years removed from Spotify, so like or YouTube even. So yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah. It's so crazy because even now, me and you trade stuff, but it's just not the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it used to be because you can still deep dive on not Dev's deep dive. You can still deep dive on artists. In fact, you can dive so much harder than you could back then on artists, but that's also part of the problem. I feel like. Is there's too much, there's everything at your fingertips, and it's so hard to wade through and find like those gems, but they're absolutely out there, especially up and coming.
And you gotta you have to look for them. It's just one of the things I was telling you. Like the first thing I ask anyone when I meet them is like, what's on your playlist? To what are you listening right now? Like what artists are really piquing your curiosity? And you'll see people go like, oh, well, I've been listening to most of the same stuff that I have. Oh, but actually, like they take a second to kind of register. Oh, but actually, I think this is what's actually really interesting me right now. And you have to do that because otherwise the algorithm just gives you things that sound like what you're already listening to. And it's a real weird thing. Like I have this thing where there's a few bands that are like this. Like I love Pearl Jam, but every band that sounds like Pearl Jam, I'm not a fan of at all.
Right.
It's like I don't want Creed in my, like I sometimes don't listen to Pearl Jam because I don't want Seven Mary 3 and Creed in my like algorithm. You know what I mean? So like that I don't trust that algorithm to introduce me to bands that I think are interesting. Although sometimes it does come up with a couple gems. There's this amazing Australian band. They're new, called the Walston Butchers, who I've been listening to a lot lately, and I would not have run into House of Protection if I wasn't just up and watching YouTube for like hours and hours and hours, way too late into the morning one day. So it does give you some gems, but nowhere. But then I'm the guy who's telling everyone you gotta listen to these guys, and like it becomes their spreading still happens more through word of mouth.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, and that's one thing I miss about Pandora kind of being the leading
Ooh,
thing.
that's a
Because
name I've not heard in a long time.
But Pandora had an awesome
Its algorithm was
algorithm, right? Like I found so many bands that I love by listening to one band that I love on Pandora. I don't find that same algorithm happening in Spotify and stuff like that. Yeah, I know. bringing back Pandora. Pandora's still around, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
It is. It is. Hey, you know what? I might make that switch, man.
I was about to say I might because I think I was about to say I used Pandora a ton in like the 2010s, early 2010s, but it might have been introducing me to more interesting acts simply because they didn't have the full like BMI library or something, Warner Brothers library. Maybe there were smaller acts that were on
there was a lot of smaller acts.
Yeah, and I'm going to consider that. Maybe let's take that offline, but that's a great idea. That'd be a cool experiment to do.
Yeah. Well, I have a little bit of it. It's not a lot of history because I'll be honest. I watched this documentary years ago. I loved the music. It was awesome. But I wanted to bring some kind of history to tie our episode together. So let's talk about a band. It's a band called Death.
Yeah.
The documentary, if you want to find it, I'm not sure where it's at. We may or may not be able to link it in the description. I'm not sure. But the documentary is called A Band Called Death. And they were three brothers from Detroit who pre-aged punk rock, but were absolutely playing harder punk rock. Like they were 20 years ahead of their time. They were playing like, to the Bad Brains level of hardcore almost in 1971. They started out as a funk band actually, but then they realized that they were more pissed off than that. And three brothers that made these recordings under a record label called Drag City out of Detroit, independent record label. Bobby David and Dennis, Dannis, Hackney. They recorded material in 1975, broke up in 77. And punk is universally called being born in 76, So these guys wrote and played and recorded these songs in 75. They refused to change their name, so they broke up because their band was called Death. It was just the band name. They broke up because of it. And they left all their recordings in storage. And then in 2008 and 2009, a friend of the Hackney family, discovered the music in like a storage bin or something in 79. And all of a sudden was like, what is this? And one of the band member, I think, I might be wrong, but I think it was one of their sons. Sorry, I'm reading off Wiki right now just to check, but it says a friend of the family, but I think the son had something to do of one of them with discovering these recordings, and they listened to it and went, what the hell is this? And brought it to their dad, and he was like, oh, that's my old band. You know what I mean? And it ended up just being like amazing. So in 2009 they reformed, and this documentary came out, and now they're one of those bands that just made these recordings that were so far ahead of their time, and just the idea of their name, Death, to have the balls to do that in 71 and and come out with the stuff that they came out with. It was crazy. You wonder how many people did hear those recordings and knew those recordings weren't going anywhere, so they just copied them and went, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be known as an innovator." You know what I mean? Or who saw them live and was just like, "I want to do that." But yeah, look it up. Documentary, A Band Called Death. It'll tell you everything you need to know. And listen to the tunes. They rock.
It's a great one. If they are online, specifically the song "Politicians in My Eyes," blew me away. And that's if that is on Spotify, that'll absolutely be in the playlist for this episode.
I think they're on Spotify.
Fantastic. I'd forgotten to search for them, but yeah, that was an incredible story. I've got. We're getting close to an hour, so I'll do a couple quick lightning rounds here. Oh, actually, first, that was Matt's Music History. Matt's Music History is brought to you by Aerotone Productions, a live sound and recording production company coming out of northwestern Pennsylvania, specializing in sound engineering, multimedia editing, archiving, and scoring. That was Matt's Music History.
Thank you, Dev.
Yep. I've got...
and Dev's Lightning Round here is brought to you by... Dev's Lightning Round, just to stay on task here, it's brought to you by 6 Tuning Pegs, providing technology solutions for guitarists and the rest of the world. Find out more at 6tuningpegs.com. That's the number 6tuningpegs.com. For the love of guitar, Dev does all kinds of deep dives, not just on our show here, which we're not doing a deep dive today. But, well, the whole show's been a deep dive, just not in the way you do it. But make sure to check out Dev's videos on 6 Tuning Pegs. They're awesome. From everything from pedal reviews to core. He does everything. I don't know, man. Wait, well, that's enough of a plug for your show. Go check it out.
That's plenty. All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk about some rock guys here. First is the Butthole Surfers, who I think are a bizarrely overlooked 90s band. When I got the album Independent Worm Saloon, I actually found a picture of me playing the drums when I was a teenager the other day, and right behind me on the wall is the Independent Worm Saloon poster. I was sure that the Butthole Surfers were going to be as big as the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You know, like
they should have been.
Yeah, and I think the name didn't do them a lot of help. But yeah, Gibby Haynes is clearly more interested in being an artist and living in the moment than he is in being a rock star. But I mean, these guys were as rockin' and as psychedelic as it comes. I want to say they were out of. Hold on, I'm going to look this up. I was going to say Austin, but no, San Antonio. Yeah, I remember that they were in that area of Texas. But absolutely, check out Independent Worm Saloon. That's my favorite album by them. And the next one I have on here in a kind of a similar vein is Ministry. Now, Al Jurgensen is a difficult guy to like, and I think that's totally fair if you play this kind of music. The guy who wrote Just One Fix should not be someone who's fun to hang out with. But it is really hard to listen to any of that stuff and not recognize that it paved the way for a whole bunch of stuff like Rob Zombie, really more than anything. You know, like it's just, you listen, it's like, oh, this is what Rob Zombie was doing a little bit later. And yeah, really incredible, like early industrial stuff. And the last one is Randy Rhoads, who was Ozzy's first guitarist after Black Sabbath. Unfortunately died in an airplane crash when he was 25.
You think he's overlooked?
I do. I think that he's absolutely overlooked.
Maybe I have a different impression because you were my guitar teacher and taught me all about him when I was a kid.
he brought like when you think about the like the use of like classical music theory in metal music, as opposed to like blues based metal, like classical based metal. Like there's an entire tree of metal that is based on that, and Randy was the first to kind of introduce it at that level. He also does a lot of things that people take for granted. You know, one of the things that comes from his classical training, maybe I should have grabbed a guitar, was he'll hold down a pedal note, like chugging a low string and then playing a bunch of different chords up above it. You know, like that's a pedal tone in a classical term, and he'll sometimes, even in Crazy Train, the verse, he's pedaling that A string, the open A string is going, and he's playing through the major triads below it. Like that's something that we just take for granted as part of metal music.
Yeah,
I can't find it prior to really his proliferation of it in that tree. But he also passed away at 25, which is like hard to even imagine how
He didn't even make the 27 club.
Yeah, exactly. He and Tupac were both 25. It's just hard to imagine what they could have, even with just 2 more years, what they could have done. But yeah, he is, when you think of, like when people say who are the guitar gods, like he somehow rarely makes the Mount Rushmore. And I think that it's really wild that people are like straining sometimes for who's the last to be on there. I'm like, I don't know how the only like white knight of old school metal is up there too. He was like, his mom was his best friend. He would take guitar lessons when he was out on tour. He would just like show up at his store and like take a lesson from the guitar teacher and be like, "You're Randy Rhoads." He's like, "Yeah. What you got?"
You want to keep learning, yeah.
Dude was one in a bazillion. All right, I think that's it for my lightning rounds. You got anything that you want to add here, man?
I kind of went through the ones I really want to talk about. Lightning round. I think the Sonics could be on there. The Sonics were just very innovative garage band. Just look them up. This is a lightning round. I'm just gonna say the Sonics. I also want to say Oliver Anthony. Who came out with that Rich Folks North of Richmond? Is that what it's called?
Richmond North.
Richmond, yeah, Rich Folks. Richmond North of Richmond. He's got kind of an interesting story because he had the golden apple right in front of him and chose not to bite, and probably could have been way bigger. He had a huge hit with that, but decided to really keep all his dignity and do things his way. And that probably hindered how far he could have taken it, but also is completely respectable, He did release an album not too long ago, but I think he made some interesting choices on how he pushed. And I had this on my list, and I'm hesitant to say it because of how respected he is, but I still don't know if people really grasp it, is Brian Setzer.
Oh yeah.
He's just, Brian Setzer is the guitar player singer for the Stray Cats, who were huge in the 80s, for bringing rockabilly back to the mainstream. But his guitar playing meshes every great rockabilly, jazz, and blues guitarist before him and marries them into a style that you've never really heard before. It's hard to say never heard before because when you're doing 12 bar, 1-4-5 music, it's hard to go out of the box. And what he did from when he was a kid, even like 20 years old, in marrying jazz and rockabilly licks and blues licks, it's just I never really heard anybody. And being a researcher, I'm not a historian, but I'm a researcher of that style of music and everything that came before him. There was a lot of people who copied that style and got really good at copying those styles, but I've never heard anybody marry jazz, blues, and true form rockabilly and country picking the way he did, and kind of created his own style. And you see guitar players doing it now, but they all came after him. And I don't think he gets credit for that. I think he gets credit as a great guitarist, but
I don't even think he does. And you're talking to, I'm a Gretsch player who lives in Minneapolis. And I always say, like, and for those of you who don't know, he's from here. But like, and he plays a Gretsch. But he's like, when I'm talking to other guitarists who are like, "Oh, really? You take him seriously?" I was like, I have unapologetically and unironically loved this guy's music for most of my life. Whether or not you even agree, most people don't listen to him. Like, the problem is that most guitarists with whom I've talked about him, also there's like a stigma here. Just, he's one of the hometown guys, and there's a lot of like, why not me, why him, as happens. But like a lot of guitarists, they see the image, you hear the very clear like Gretsch sound, and you go like, oh, well, he's playing those same old licks. Like, dude, Homeboy's got like mad chops and incredible. We talk about charisma. This dude's got it. He's got energy, and he's not just entertaining, but even if you don't like his music, and you're unable to hear his mastery of the instrument, he single-handedly resurrected two styles of music. He brought back both rockabilly and swing at times when they were both completely dead. Like that's just
Dead.
That's impossible. That sounds impossible for anyone to have done, and he did it by sheer will of force, and also doing it the first time, and then recognizing I need to do something different. I'm evolving as an artist, but this is the right way for it to go, and brought back swing, and like all of a sudden there's still
in the 90s
swing dance clubs that are still going that started in the 90s. It's unbelievable.
and out of pure love and passion for the styles. That's
Exactly.
the thing. He didn't use the styles. He didn't use the styles to create a niche. He truly loved that art form.
He was keeping the art that he loves alive
And
out up
innovated
front.
it too.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what's so cool. But it's crazy to me because like there is that whole like, oh, Brian Setzer, even in the rockabilly community, nothing but respect, but it's like, okay, of course Brian Setzer. And it's like,
Yeah. It's similar to how Green Day is seen by a lot of people.
yeah,
It's
but it's like, man,
taken for granted.
this dude's just so good. Like if you watch, especially, I dare you guys, go find a YouTube video of early Stray Cats. We're talking like 83
Dude,
Stray Cats.
unbelievable. They were the biggest band in the world for a short period before you were born, and that was.
but
it's
the
it's
sweat.
totally easy to see why. Yeah, they're.
I tell
working
people
real
all the
hard.
time after my shows, whenever I've gotten like interviewed or done podcasts, people ask me, what is rock and roll? And I always do this move. I go like this. That's rock and roll. And for those of you who didn't see it, I wiped my brow and flicked it. Sweat is rock and roll. And you watch those old videos of the Stray Cats and they're drenched. They are pouring every ounce of heart and soul into that room, into that crowd, that smoky atmosphere. And just watching how Setzer handles it, like the grace is, I don't know. Just go watch one of those old Stray Cat videos and tell me how much you feel like making fun of Brian Setzer. You're not gonna.
I'm gonna put Rumble and Brighton on the playlist, not Stray Cat Strut or.
No,
Rock This
Rumble and
Town.
Brian's
Like,
it's a perfect one.
fantastic song for people who haven't really listened to him. All right, and with that, I think we should wrap it up and just maybe mention that we do this every week, every Friday. So make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more. Next Friday is going to be Friday the 13th. So we're going to do a special episode on scary, spooky music, songs, and acts and stuff like that. You got anything else to add here this week, Matt?
No, man. I actually got a fun story. Last week we just played a bluegrass festival. Now, if any of you guys have had an opportunity or a chance to follow my music at all, you can check it out at brokeboland.com, BROKEBOLAND. And we're doing like it's a string show with my it's called Broke Boland String Show, and it's my original music put in a string format with cello, violin, me doing a one-man band, running in place, playing with my drums with my feet, and a mandolin. And it's not traditional folk or bluegrass, and it's not quite folk punk. It's its own kind of thing. I'm really pumped about it and proud of it. But we played a bluegrass festival out in the country this week, and we wear all black. Jean jackets. We all have hats. We all kind of look like I do. And we walk into this place, and it was a real life record scratch. There's about 300 people there, and everyone's in cowboy hats and flannel shirts and very traditional. Like if you guys follow any kind of bluegrass festivals or anything, the traditionalists come in full swing, and they'll let you know it. And we walked into that place looking like we do, and they were just like, what is going on here? It was a real life movie moment that I got to live. And then we got on stage and obviously sounded nothing like anything else. And we were like, we got to get the hell out of here ASAP. Like, we looked at each other on stage and were like, I don't know about this. We get off stage and just got surrounded with love. It was awesome. We thought, like, we pushed it too far, or we were too intense, too energetic, and they just showed us a lot of appreciation, and it was kind of a humbling moment. You know what I mean? Like we were nervous and we totally misjudged. So it's important to take those moments in, folks. If you're a live performer, don't be afraid to stick to your guns and do your thing. And don't assess the situation until you get off stage. So that was something cool that happened. You know, we were out of our element and embraced.
Where was this again?
This was the Oil City. It was called the Oil County Bluegrass Festival.
Awesome.
And there were tons of amazing players there and stuff. You know, it was great. It's just we were the city boys in the country for sure. You know what I mean?
I know. Believe me, I know what you mean.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, on that note, thanks for that. Next week is going to be scary, spooky songs for Friday the 13th. This has been episode 11 of Once Upon a Tune, the podcast about tunes where we celebrate music
and the characters who make it. See you guys. I'm Broke Bolin.
I'm Dev Jane. See you next week. Cheers.